I just read about a company making $174 million a year selling gas station pizza, and they have zero competition. I was really curious, so I did my research. Check this out. It's called Hunt Brothers Pizza. They have 9,703 locations across the USA. You'll find them mostly in small towns, rural areas. And in this video, on this podcast, I'm going to tell you exactly how they do it. I'm going to break down the business model and give it to you. That's coming up in just a sec. Before we get to it, if you're new here, my name's Jon Davids. I am the author of Marketing Superpowers, Build a Brand So Good that Getting Customers Feels Like Magic. I've driven over $500 million in revenue for myself and for my clients with the strategies in this book over the last decade. So I am super excited for you guys to get your hands on it. Get the book, get the ebook, get the audiobook, get it all. You can get it at marketingsuperpowersbook.com or wherever you buy books. If you're a fan of the podcast, make sure to go to jondavids.com, get on my newsletter, and of course, subscribe, tell a friend. That's how I know you're getting value out of the content I'm putting out. Let's get to the show. So I'm going to break down the business model for you on Hunt Brothers Pizza. We're going to start with step one, which is finding the right partner. Now, Hunt Brothers operates as a franchise model. They partner with others to open and run locations, just like any other franchise. But there's a very specific type of partner they look for. To be a franchisee, you need to have a gas station or a convenience store. And it needs to be preferably in a small or remote area. I'll get back to that in a second. And in terms of space, you need to have 59 square feet of free space in your facility, or you need to at least be able to make up that space, 59 square feet. If you check those boxes, you're in. Step two, we're gonna make them an offer they can't refuse. So to get a franchise partner on board, Hunt Brothers makes a simple offer. Pay us $10,000 and we'll give you a money printing machine. Kind of. It's actually just a pizza oven. That startup fee, that $10,000, gets you the equipment, the signage, the training, everything you need to get up and running with a Hunt Brothers franchise in your gas station or convenience store. And if you don't have $10,000, no sweat. Hunt Brothers will lend you the money and you can just pay it back as you go. Don't worry, this is not going to take very long. Now we get to step three. This is what I call the pizza party. This is the good part. This pizza stand is really easy to operate. You get the bunch of pre-made dough. The franchise will send you the pre-made dough. You take the dough, you get it into little dough squared circles. They call them hunks. And you put it in the oven for 6 minutes. And that's it. Then you can sell fresh pizza, served in what they call not slices, but hunks. That's the unit that they actually sell them in. And then you can also put your own toppings on. They have a whole way that you can customize the pizza. The point is, the process of making the pizza is really, really simple. And you better keep that oven hot because there's gonna be lines forming outside the gas station. This is very, very high selling product. It moves fast. A typical gas station sells $5,000 worth of pizza every single month at a juicy profit. Subtract the cost of ingredients and utilities, you're looking at about a 40% profit margin. That's $2,000 cash money on $5,000 of gross revenue. Now, some locations I've read will make up to $10,000 a month at that location. And again, you've got your food costs. Those are variable based on how much pizza you're making, but your fixed costs are extremely minimal. Because think about it. The labor involved is, again, minimal. You've already got gas station employees at the gas station. You've already got cashiers working at the convenience store. So this is just another task they'll have to do during the downtime. The same way they would fill up the shelves with Coca-Cola, or they put the chocolate bar in its place, or maybe they've got an area of flowers and they're putting the flowers down. The same people that are doing that are going to be doing this. So that's a fixed cost. It doesn't really move around too much. Your only variable cost is how much pizza are you selling? And then, of course, you have utility bills, you're using the oven and that sort of thing. Now, number four, we've got very little competition. Remember when I said they had zero competitors? Well, they don't actually have zero competitors because there are other pizza joints in the world. But Hunt Brothers specifically picks locations in very remote areas. So again, think rural communities, think small towns, think farm towns. These are places that don't have a lot of restaurants anywhere near them. In fact, it's usually the only thing resembling a restaurant for miles at a time. I saw comments when I posted this to LinkedIn. I posted the story to LinkedIn. Over 200,000 people read it. I'm going to give you some of the best comments in just a minute. But actually, in the comments, people were saying, I go to Hunt Brothers a couple times a week. It's one of our meal options. I grew up, my grandparents live in a small town. There's a Hunt Brothers just down the street. They go there to get dinner, to get lunch. So it's actually a part of the community, and it forms the basis of, in the same way, if you live in a big city, maybe you go to Subway, maybe you go to Pizza Hut, fast food, maybe you go to a nice restaurant down the street, a deli. This is part of the fabric of the community in terms of the dining experience. Number 5, let's talk big pizza money. Now, how do the big brothers, i.e. the Hunt Brothers, make their money? Well, the parent company doesn't actually make much from that upfront fee. The $10,000 startup fee, I'm imagining that basically is just cost of goods sold. I mean, it's going to cost them $10,000 to give you the pizza oven, the training, the initial ingredients, the signage, everything that you need to get up and running. My assumption, I have no way to prove this, my assumption is that probably runs them $8,000, $9,000, maybe $10,000. So I don't think there's a whole lot of profit up front, and I'm actually going to discount that startup fee entirely. I'm not going to use that in my calculation. They don't get a royalty. So typically a franchise like McDonald's or Tim Hortons or any kind of business that is running a franchise model, car rental company, you name it, what they're going to do is they're going to take a royalty. 5%, 6%, 7% of whatever revenue you make, we're going to take that. There's no cut of sales, so it's not like we're taking a piece of the revenue you're making. Again, Hunt Brothers doesn't charge for any of those things. What do they charge for? The ingredients and the packaging. It runs about $1,500 to $2,000 per month per location. So I did some back of the napkin math. Let's see my dirty math, okay? 9,703 locations, $1,500 a month per location. I'm using the low end of these numbers. That's about $14.5 million a month, and that's how you make $174 million a year selling gas station pizza. So I want to make a few observations about this business that I love. Number one, it's CapEx light. There's very little capital expenditure going in to scale this business. So think about a typical franchise. Okay, a typical restaurant franchise needs a few things. What does it need? Well, you got to have an actual location. You got to have like a space in a building. Maybe you need 2,000 or 3,000 square feet. You need a counter. You need a dedicated cash register or point of sale system. You need ovens and you need food preparation areas. You need a kitchen. You need utensils. You need a place for people to sit, a dining area. Maybe you need washrooms people can use and a coat check, all kinds of things that you would need to operate a normal restaurant. But what does this place need? Well, they don't need any of that. They need an existing spot, a gas station or a convenience store that already exists. They're not building gas stations and convenience stores. And then from there, they will utilize the unused space. So typically, this is space that's not being used or not being used productively. In other words, it's not generating a profit. Maybe it's just empty space. Maybe you have a shelving unit there. Who knows? But of course, you want to utilize every single square foot you can in a retail environment. So it does that for you. But the capital expenditure at the top level is very, very minimal. In fact, because they have franchisees paying them up front, it's $10,000. Yes, the franchisee is going to cover the cost just like every other franchise, but they don't need to say, hey, we need a $400,000 franchise fee. We don't need a $1.3 million franchise fee. We don't need some big number where you're going to have to go out and get a bank loan and secure your house, or we're going to have to worry about major financing needs. $10,000, if you're going to open one of these franchises, especially if you already have an operating business with cash flows, is an amount of money that a lot of people can pull up. And if they can't, Hunt Brothers can lend that to you. Again, $10,000 is not going to be a huge number that you can't pull off. So I love the low capital expenditure cost of it. Number two, which I just talked about a minute ago, it's trash to cash. You guys know JD loves his trash to cash business models. How do you take something that is not being used, something that is disposed of, and how do we take that and turn it into a revenue generating asset? This is what Airbnb did. They turned your empty bedroom into a hotel room. This is what Uber did. They turned the car sitting in your driveway idling into a taxi cab. Well, this is what Hunt Brothers is doing. They're taking that space in your store that maybe is not that productive. You're selling newspapers there. People aren't buying as many newspapers. Maybe you have a freezer there. You're not selling that many popsicles, right, in the wintertime. What are we going to put there? A Hunt Brothers stand, 59 square feet, and all of a sudden take something that's not productive and make it productive. Trash to cash, my friends. That is where it's at. Something else I love is that we are innovating on the distribution, not the product. This is where so many entrepreneurs and business people get it wrong. They start to think that you need to be super innovative on the product. I bet you the pizza isn't all that different. Now, maybe it is different. Maybe it's better pizza. Maybe they have a special way that they cook it, or maybe they have a special way they make it, ingredients, whatever. Pizza is pizza is pizza. It all tastes like pizza, right? But where did they innovate? They innovated on the distribution. They innovated on the franchise model. They innovated on the pricing. They innovated on the location, right? Getting pizza of this quality in a rural town without having to set up a franchise, using an existing location. Those are all pieces of innovation. And I think it's so important to look at these kinds of businesses and say, look at where they're innovating, not just on the product, but in everything that happens behind the scenes, in the logistics, in the distribution, and everywhere else. And finally, they are de-risking a typically risky business asset. Restaurants are not easy, right? I had that conversation with Greg Majewski. He was the former CEO of Jimmy John's Restaurant OG. You can hear him on episode 125 of the podcast if you haven't heard that. And Greg was saying the reason franchises work well is because opening up your own restaurant for most people is just a losing battle. You are going to lose. It sucks. It is a bad business for so many reasons. Go listen to episode 125. You'll hear for yourself. But in this case, we're taking a restaurant, right? It is technically a restaurant. You're selling pizza, but we're doing it in a way where we're de-risking the whole thing, right? We're going to a location we know people already visit. We know it has foot traffic. We know that this product is generally accepted. Pizza is pretty universal across the USA. So in all these ways, you're taking risk out of it. Now, I want to jump to one of the comments here. This woman named Cheryl wrote that she is an ex-restaurateur, and then she went ahead and just bashed my entire post. And I love this stuff. I love when experts come in and just call me on my shit, because you know what? Maybe I am full of it. I don't know. Let's see. So the analysis she gave, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically what she's saying here is this is the worst pizza franchise based on the numbers that I'm giving on the planet, and possibly the worst numbers for any food and beverage business. And then she goes on to talk about the food costs and the labor costs and how much you should be making per square foot, and on and on and on. And she talks about what would be good and what would be bad. Here's why I think Cheryl is not realizing what I'm talking about. Because we're not really talking about a traditional restaurant business here. We're not talking about what would be good as a standalone restaurant. If you were to say to me, hey, John, I'm going to open a restaurant and it's going to make $5,000 a month, and I'm going to sell pizza, and it's going to be self-serve and blah, blah, blah. And you gave me all the elements of Hunt Brothers Pizza. I would say that's a terrible idea. Don't do it. You're dumb. That's what I would say. But in this case, we're talking about using an unutilized asset and turning it into something, taking dead space and making money from it, and maybe bringing people in who wouldn't otherwise come in, because Hunt Brothers Pizza is a brand, and people go in, and maybe when they're in, they buy a drink, they buy something else, and they get gas, and so, yeah, it gets them in anyhow. But what I'm talking about here is the same analogy as saying, I wouldn't buy a house just to rent out an Airbnb. I wouldn't buy a car just to have an Uber. People do that. I would say those aren't great businesses. There's better ways to make money than that. But what I am saying is that in this situation where we have a business that already exists, and now we find a way to make an extra 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 grand a month, that is why I say this is a really cool business, a great story. And hey, even if you don't like it from the franchisee standpoint, you got to admit, from the franchisor standpoint, if you're Hunt Brothers, you are doing extremely well. I love this story. I love Hunt Brothers. I love doing business breakdowns like this. I hope you guys found it valuable. If you did, let me know. Leave a comment, leave a review, leave a rating on the podcast feed. If you're watching on YouTube, hit me up in the comments. And of course, go to jondavids.com, get on the newsletter. I'll talk to you guys next time.